Hey guys, we're here in the garden, and I'm sitting here thinking about UBI because I just had a nice long trench tweet with some guy who I'm not sure. Um, I don't think he's a paid troll. I think he's just a friend of Andrew Yang, but just was not willing to listen to too much reason. I'll probably get into more detail about that one later, but I realize that there's some misunderstandings about UBI we gotta cover here because somehow, even though I've said it 100 times, people don't seem to get that when I'm championing food stamps in addition to UBI, I'm not trying to attack UBI. I'm trying to promote the idea that if I get $1,000 a month and you get $1,000 a month and every CEO gets $1,000 a month, it might be humanity first to give the people on food stamps $1,000 a month because it's a universal basic income, and so it shouldn't be dependent on where your paycheck's coming from or how much your paycheck is. It should be universal. You can disagree with me, but that's my personal opinion. I also think it is humanity first to suggest that the lady that called into Scott Stanton's show the other day and was so excited about getting $4,000 a month because that would help her and her 3 kids, and then found out she's only going to get $1,000 a month because her 3 kids are under 18, and then she finds out that her $900 in current benefits are going away, and that he's going to impose a carbon tax, and she happens to live in a rural part of the country that's going to be paying the most for that carbon tax. As opposed to another candidate who's promoting a UBI that doesn't promote carbon taxes and doesn't want to censor us and is actively outspoken about ending war and hasn't just signed a pledge to end war. But the point of this video is to get into UBI, not all that other stuff. Although that other pesky stuff might be other good reasons to vote for a different candidate that also promotes UBI and is being censored very, very heavily, but is clearly the best candidate to beat Donald Trump and has the best policies and the best vision for humanity. But, vote how you're going to vote, of course. I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise. But I got into a fairly long and heated debate with one of these people that usually doesn't stick with me as long as this one did, but it was pretty great because it really helped me to flesh out my argument even better. So get this. The arguments against promoting a UBI that also promotes food stamps are that it'll be harder to pass in Congress and we should just pass the easy one first. No. I think that we should probably start out at the negotiating table with a UBI that at least has some things to cede, because that's how negotiation works. If you already start with, we're cutting everyone's benefits on everything, can you pass our UBI, please? They might pass it, but what's the point of negotiation at that point? More importantly, though, if we're willing to admit that a UBI is a societal good for a drug addict, because that drug addict will now support his habit in a more healthy way than robbing people, can we also agree, probably, I would like to think, that the mom with 3 kids deserves to get a UBI plus food stamps so that her kids don't end up having to go drop out of school to work or worse? That they don't end up robbing to feed their family? If a drug addict deserves money to buy drugs, because that's a societal good, can we admit that the mom who is raising 3 kids by herself might need a little more assistance than you or me or the CEO? I'm just saying. And yeah, you might make the argument that, well, if we don't try to put all these social welfare safety things on top of it, it'll be easier to pass. Somebody even said, well, that's why it didn't get passed in the 70s. And I had a pretty good chuckle about that, because as someone who's read a lot of books, talking to someone who clearly, no offense, but seems like they haven't, I can tell you a whole lot about why things probably didn't get passed very well in the 70s, and saying that is like saying that the reason that we're still in war is because the Democrats haven't been able to control the House and Senate hard enough in the last decade. It's nonsense. You can say what you will, but there's a difference between lip service and actual policy, and the why it fell through is a lot less important most of the time. It's either going to fall through or it's not, depending on whether the people with money want it to happen or the people who want it to happen stand up and make it happen. And if we're going to the negotiating table already with no benefits, there's nothing to cut. What are they going to do? Take it? No, I'm sure we'll get the $1,000 UBI, but that's not the point. The point is, there are people where that extra food will make a huge difference. It might not make a difference for you. Food stamps are archaic and cumbersome and awkward and obnoxious, and in some states you only apply for 3 months right after you work, although in my state I've got friends who've been on food stamps for years without having to work, so in some states it works better than others. But bottom line, if you want to pass it, it is going to be a lot easier to sell people on this UBI idea when you don't have to contend with smart people like me going, it's not fair that you're paying the CEO and me and you more than we are paying our starving people. It'll be easier to pass in that respect. Also, I don't know if you know this, but our congressmen who will be passing said UBI are beholden to our voters, at least to the degree that they have to get elected. And maybe the congressmen that are outspoken about not wanting to give us food might not get reelected. I'm just saying it might not be as hard to pass as everyone's making it out to believe. And finally, people are saying that the legislation would be just too complicated. And I feel like it would be as simple, if not simpler, than Yang's UBI plan to just say people can do what they want and everyone gets $1,000 a month. I mean, I can literally write the bill in as many words. Everyone gets $1,000 a month, period. Done. Oh, I did it. Wow, look at that. That's a really easy bill to write, just in the literal bill writing sense. Some people might argue with, well, that's going to bankrupt us if we don't have funding mechanisms. And yes, you're correct. So we probably don't want to have every single inefficient social safety net welfare program that we have in existence, because some of them are kind of inefficient and don't get used very well and will pretty much become irrelevant compared to UBI. But I would like to make the argument that food stamps is one of our most efficient programs, and for people who need food, it can make a huge difference. And the few politicians that really want to argue against it probably won't be keeping their jobs. I'm just saying, that's a hard argument to make when the food stamps cost less than 1% of what a UBI is going to cost us currently. And probably a lot of people that are currently on food stamps won't be on food stamps once we have a UBI. So we're talking about fractions of a percent of what this UBI is going to cost to feed our hungriest. Yang, you like the math. You can't try to tell me that you're not good enough at math to make this same argument, because I just made it in less than 5 minutes. Can you stand up for your people? Because if you're willing to do the math, that was a pretty logical argument for why food stamps, and also because not having food causes people stress, causes kids to underperform in school, and causes permanent effects on how people think and behave later on in life, not to mention taxes our health system. If anybody needs food for literally any reason, I would like to make a pretty strong case that a program that costs us somewhere in the range of hundreds of millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, not very much money compared to trillions of dollars, is probably a social good that's worth keeping. Maybe minimizing, maybe recognizing that a lot of people that currently have UBI should unenroll from food stamps and have to re-enroll in it, or I don't know, however you want to work it. But you can't tell me that denying the hungry mom who currently gets $900 in aid and will be getting $1,000 in UBI once this bill is passed, the ability to add food stamps to that is humanity first. It literally would be an easier bill to pass in every respect, because you wouldn't have people like me complaining about it. We'd just be like, oh yeah, UBI is a great idea. And the few people that are complaining it's too expensive, we have the 1% argument right there, and it's a convenient little fraction of 1%. That's got a nice little great rib to it. They can't stand against that argument. So if your candidate is unwilling to even entertain the idea as something that he might potentially want to bring to the negotiation table, you may want to consider going with the candidate that has already said she's going to do a UBI that stacks with food stamps and doesn't want to reunify the press and is suing our Google overlords and has been actively, very blatantly kept out of the debate because they knew they couldn't handle a third round in the ring with her. She's going to win. The train has left the station. The boulder is rolling down the hill, people. If you want a UBI, I recommend going with the UBI candidate that everybody likes, not the UBI candidate that some people are very afraid of. All right. Thanks for gabbing Aloha America, people. I'll see you around. Take it easy.